Genesis chapter 35. After the end of Genesis chapter 34, and one of the darkest chapters in the Bible, with Dinah abused, Simeon and Levi proceed to deceive the city, kill off all the men, and take the women and children into slavery. And when Jacob confronts them, like, look, you've made me hated among all the inhabitants of the land, and they're going to come and kill me and my entire household. Their response is like, should we treat our sister that way? And the obvious comeback to that is, no, should you treat a whole city that way? And answer is absolutely not. Their actions were evil. It disqualified them from having the line of the kings in Israel. And that brings us to Genesis chapter 35. So here, Jacob obeys God's command to return to Bethel, and God working in that situation along with Jacob's obedience is the focus of the first half of the chapter. And the second half of the chapter focuses on an overview of Jacob's family, his entire family, from his children to his wives to his father Isaac. That's the very brief overview of what we're going through today. Do I have a volunteer to read verses 1 through 7? Verses 1 through 7. Go ahead, Bradley.
God said unto Jacob, Arise, go up to Bethel, and dwell there, make there an altar unto God, and appear unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. Then Jacob said unto his household, all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you, be clean and change your garments. And let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, who was with me in the way which I went. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods that were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears. Jacob hid them unto the oak which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them. And they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people with him. He built there an altar and called the place El Bethel, because their God appeared unto them and fled from the face of Israel.
So, these verses, one of the most important parts of this chapter. Very first part, Jacob's dealing with everybody's going to hate him and everybody's going to kill him because of what Simeon and Levi did. And God immediately gives him the direction, arise, go up to Bethel, it's about 30 miles away, and dwell there and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. If you look on the map on the back side of the page, the X is where Bethel is. They're going south a bunch to the area of Bethel. So God gives Jacob very clear direction when he needs it. And one of the greatest things you can say as an example of Jacob's life and his relationship with God is every time God told him to do something, he obeys immediately. Every single time. With Abraham, this is also very much a pattern. In fact, Abraham would arise early in the morning when God asked him to do the most difficult things. Each time it makes a point to say he arose early in the morning to go do it. Here, Jacob tells his whole family, we're going back to Bethel. It's where God appeared to me. So therefore, put away all the foreign gods and change your clothes and purify yourselves. He's like, we're taking this very seriously. We're going back to God. Absolutely a good thing. But we see there a weakness of Jacob, that he hadn't enforced this for his family in general. His family is also worshiping foreign gods until this point. That's what the word strange means, by the way. Strange doesn't mean weird, although it would have been weird. Strange in the King James Version means foreign. So he says, put all those gods away. We're going back. Change your garments. We're taking this seriously. And there very much is a point when we are seeking God, we should take it very seriously. God is holy, and it's a great privilege he's given us to not only seek him, to have a direct relationship with him. So, Jacob tells his whole family, here's where we're going. We're going here because God told me there, and God appeared to me back. When Jacob was running from Esau to go up to his family where Laban was, he stopped in Bethel, and that's where he had the vision of angels and a ladder, and God confirmed his covenant to him. So they're going back to that place. They gave Jacob all the gods in verse 4, and all their earrings, which were in their ears. I thought immediately when I heard this, maybe they were like the Ishmaelites mentioned during Gideon's time, which apparently had these very big earrings that Gideon used to make an ephod from. My guess, based on when Jacob says, purify yourselves and change your clothes, why would you give him the earrings? My guess is they were used in some type of pagan worship. But that's just a guess. So they gave all the gods, all the idols, they gave all their earrings. Jacob buries them underneath the oak tree at Shechem. So he's like, we're leaving it there with basically the ruin of the city, and it's not coming back. Then also I would make a point in the end of verse 3. This is Jacob seeing God's goodness for him. He said, I will make there an altar unto God who answered me in the day of my distress. That was when he was coming back and Esau was coming to meet him with 400 men. Jacob prays very directly to God that night, and God answers his prayer, and the meeting between him and Esau goes as good as it's possible to go. So he says, look, God answered me in the day of my distress and was with me in the way which I went. When Jacob left to go up to Laban, that was God's promise to him. I will be with you in the way that you will go. And then God reinforces that when God tells him to come back to Israel. And he's saying, look, God kept that part of the promise. He's been with me in the way which I went. So Jacob's trusting in God. They're going to Bethel. Obviously, only moving about 20 miles is not a huge distance if everybody around you wants to kill you. But it says in verse 5, the Bible, and they journeyed, that's Jacob's family, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. So God dealt with his part. He kept all the other cities from attacking Jacob. They go about 20 miles to Bethel, which is very close to where a lot of Abraham's life was spent, but it's not close to where Isaac is. And verse 6, that's the summary verse. I guess for those of you that haven't been here for the whole book of Genesis, very, very often in passages, you either get a summary verse and then the explanation of what happened, or you get the explanation of what happens and then a summary verse. This is very, very common in the book of Genesis. Verse 6 is the summary verse. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people that were with him. The first verses explain how that happened and how God directed this, and then we have just the summary in verse 6. The city was called Luz. Jacob named it Bethel when God appeared to him the first time and he had the vision of angels. He named it Bethel, meaning the house of God. He set up a pillar there and anointed it. And that's why it says he came to Luz. That is Bethel, because Jacob had named it Bethel. And then verse 7, he built there an altar just as he had promised and called the place El Bethel, which either means God's house, or it means God's mighty house, depending on how the adjectives work here. But El Bethel, because there God appeared to him when he fled from the face of his brother. So he's, once again, restatement. Why is it called Bethel? Because God appeared to him there when he was fleeing from Esau, and now he's back. Any comments or questions on the first 7 verses? Okay. So going on to verses 8 through 10. Do I have a volunteer to read verses 8 through 10? Go ahead, Steve.
Deborah, Rebecca's nurse, died. She was buried beneath Bethel on her oak. The name of it was called Alan Baka. And God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padan Aram and blessed him. God said unto him, thy name is Jacob, thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel.
Very good. So they're at Bethel now. Don't know how long they've been there. Here, Deborah passes away. Deborah being, as it says, Rebecca's nurse, with very unexpected. Why is that unexpected? Because we have Isaac and Rebekah. And here's the first mention of that family in a very long time. Deborah is the nurse who came down with Rebekah all the way to when she came to marry Isaac. And she died, meaning at least he's had some distant interactions with his family. She was buried under the oak tree in this exact city, and the name of it's called Alon Bakuth, meaning the oak of weeping. It's a reference to sorrow there. There wouldn't be many trees in this part, so burying her underneath a tree is, I guess, the quick way of like having a gravestone. You know where the place is, and they're honoring Deborah here. The implication would be that she was with them instead of with Isaac. And we don't know the full story here. We do know that by this time, Rebekah has passed away. When Jacob left to go to Laban, he never saw Rebekah again. She passed away by the time he got back. But for some reason, Deborah was with them, and when she passes away, she's buried here. Then we have verse 9, one of these summary verses again. It's a summary of the next section. Why is the next section important? Because God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padan Aram, that's back where Laban was, and blessed him. And then verse 10 is the part of the blessing that Jacob's already received. So it is good to have you. We're in Genesis chapter 35, verse 10. So verse 10, God restates the fact that he's changed Jacob's name to Israel. He says, your name is Jacob, which means grabbing the heel literally, but in the Hebrew language, which is very metaphorical, it has lots of figures of speech. It means the supplanter, the one who takes the place of somebody else. And he says, your name's Jacob, but it won't be called Jacob anymore, it'll be called Israel, meaning a prince with God. And he called his name Israel. And then we have the new part, the part of the blessing that God is confirming his covenant with Jacob the same way as with Isaac and Abraham in the following verses. Any questions before we get there? So, then we have verses 11 through 15. Go ahead, Matilda.
And God said, I am God Almighty. Therefore, a multiply. A nation and company of nations shall proceed from you, and king shall come from the back. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, I give to you, and to your descendants after you, I give this land. Then God went up from him in the place where he happened. So Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he gave to him a pillar of stone, and he poured a green offering on it, and he poured oil on it. And Jacob called the name of that place where God spoke with him, Bethel.
So, verse 9 says, when God appeared to Jacob again, he blessed him. Verses 10 and following explain what this blessing was. And verse 11 is the part he specifically says to Jacob, and he's confirming his covenant with Abraham and Isaac through Jacob. God said unto him, I am God Almighty. The Hebrew word there is Shaddai, and it basically means God's power to do everything and his provision. So he's saying, oh, I'm God, but not only that, I have the complete power to do everything and to provide for everyone. And what am I going to do with that? The rest of this, be fruitful and multiply. This is part of the promise to Abraham given back at Genesis 17. This one actually looks very similar, given to Jacob. Be fruitful and multiply. I find that interesting when Jacob's had all of his children but one, that God says to him, be fruitful and multiply, but God's referring to he's blessing all of his descendants. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee. So not only one nation, but a group of nations. And kings shall come out of thy loins. And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee I will give the land. So he said, look, the same land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I give that same land to you, and to all your descendants after you. Remember, Abraham and Isaac trusted God in this promise because each of them had only purchased one plot of ground from the entire land of Canaan, the entire land that God had promised. The full fulfillment of that will be in the millennial kingdom when they're back upon this earth. But God has promised, look, I will give you the land and I'll give your descendants the land. It's why it's called the promised land. And he promises it to Jacob here. And then in verse 13, God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. So it's either a theophany or a Christophany. God appears directly in physical form to talk to Jacob, to bless him and confirm the covenant with him. And then Jacob's response in verse 14, Abraham set up altars, Jacob sets up pillars. This is before the giving of the law. There's no directly commanded way to worship God. So he sets up a pillar, he anoints the pillar, and he pours the drink offering on it, meaning wine is a drink offering. Even in the Old Testament worship of the tabernacle, there were grain offerings and drink offerings. It wasn't all just animal sacrifices. Those offerings were present as well. So that's what Jacob decides to do. He sets up a pillar of stone, find a long, tall stone, turn it up, straight up and down, anoint the stone with oil, and have a drink offering there. And Jacob had already called it Bethel, meaning house of God, because God spoke to him. And he calls it Bethel again in verse 15. So here, basically God starts with, I am God Almighty. I have all the power to do this, to show his strength to complete his covenant and to carry out the promises he's promising to Jacob. And then he establishes the same promise. I've promised the land, I've promised the multiplication of your descendants, and I've promised basically his presence. And then after that, God went up from him again, and Jacob anoints the pillar. I don't know if the previous one fell down, because the last time God appeared to him at Bethel, he set up a rock as the pillar and anointed it. I don't know if the previous one fell down, or if he anointed a second pillar, now that God has appeared to him a second time. Any questions or comments on these verses? So, they're at Bethel for some amount of time, and during this time, Deborah passes away. Now they're leaving and moving on from Bethel in verses 16 through 21. Do I have a volunteer to read verses 16 through 21? Go ahead, Yuri.
And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way come to Ephrath. And Rachel travailed, and she would have hard labor. And it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. And Rachel died, and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And Jacob set a pillar upon her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave unto this day. And Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the tower of Elam.
So, these verses. They're journeying from Bethel, and they're going to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And specifically, there are two Bethlehems in the land of Israel. The Bethlehem down south is the one that David was born in, and the one that is by far mentioned the most in the Bible. And that's called Bethlehem Ephrathah after the region, or it's called Bethlehem Judah, because it's the city Bethlehem that's in the land of Judah. The other Bethlehem is quite a bit up north, and it's in Galilee. The word Bethlehem just means the house of bread. Think really beautiful farmland areas that are perfect for raising grain. But they are on the way to this area, Ephrath, which, as it mentions in this verse, is Bethlehem. And on that part, Rachel dies. Why did she die? Because they have childbirth. She's going through childbirth on the way, and it's hard labor. The midwife comforts her because apparently realizes things are going very wrong. Don't be afraid. You're going to have this son too. And she has enough strength that she is able to give birth to her son, but she passes away. She calls her son's name Benoni, meaning it's the son of my sorrow. She realized that she wasn't going to live through it. So she calls his name according to the tragedy. And his father renames him Benjamin, which means the son of my right hand, putting Benjamin in a very special place. So along this way, definitely a tragedy, but in this part, Jacob has his 12th son for the 12 tribes of Israel, Benjamin. Rachel is buried, and there's no trees or anything there, unlike there were with Deborah, so he sets up a pillar there. There's a pillar to mark where she was buried. And then verse 21, Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. We're in the region of Bethlehem here. The Tower of Eder, it just means the Tower of Flocks. Think a 1 or 2 story tower that you use. You go up on the top to make sure all of your livestock aren't getting into trouble and such. It's not a special tower or a special city. We're in the area, and there's this tower set up so that you can watch livestock and such, make sure they're not getting into trouble, back in the days when there were no fences. Any questions or comments on these verses? So that goes through the whole first part. God tells Jacob to journey, and he journeys first to Bethel. God appears to him and blesses him again and confirms his covenant. Then he's journeying south. We find out from the end of this chapter he's heading towards where Isaac is. They're going to reunite. But along that way, Deborah passes away. He has his 12th son born, Benjamin, and Rachel passes away as well. That brings us to verses 22 through 26. Do I have a volunteer to read verses 22 to 26? I appreciate you volunteering, Matilda. So you can absolutely go ahead.
And it happened when Israel dwelt in that land, that the king went and lay with Bilhah, his father, concubine. And Israel hid about. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah were Ben, Jacob, firstborn, and Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The son of Bilhah, Rachel, with servant were Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Leah, with servant were Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan-Aram.
So thank you very much. Have in verse 22 the reason why Reuben is disqualified both from the birthright and from being in the line of the kings. The incest in that verse, his choices there. Not only do they disqualify him from that, but we have the promise at the end of Genesis given to Reuben, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. And Pastor Andy Oliver down in Puyallup mentioned, of all the people mentioned in the Bible, all the heroes and champions, the judges God raised up, the kings God raised up, the leaders God raised up, none of them are from the tribe of Reuben. This has very far-reaching consequences in his decision there. God worked through it, and God still, I'll say, has dealt very bountifully and graciously for the land of Israel. God always works in spite of sin, but sin still has consequences. And then brings us to the overview now of Jacob's whole family. So we have the sons of Leah given in order. These are the oldest sons of Jacob: Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon and Levi and Judah, and Issachar and Zebulun. Last two, Issachar and Zebulun, are quite a bit younger. They're younger than the 4 sons mentioned at the end: Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. But all of them are sons of Leah. So Jacob has 6 sons through Leah, and Judah would be the one who retains the authority, because Reuben is disqualified for what just happened, and Simeon and Levi for their decision in massacring the town of Shechem, and that leaves Judah with the authority. Sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph is the one who gets the birthright, which is why in the nation of Israel, Joseph has 2 half-tribes instead of 1. Ephraim and Manasseh under him is because Joseph gets the birthright, Reuben being disqualified. Incidentally, there are passages I can prove that from in 1 Chronicles. I saw several of you look like, did not expect that. There are several passages in 1 Chronicles of the genealogy there that mention the birthright was Joseph's. And as a result of that, he gets 2 half-tribes instead of 1 full tribe. Then we have Benjamin, the youngest son, as the 2 sons of Rachel, the 2 sons of Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali, and the 2 sons of Zilpah, Gad and Asher, which each of them are older than Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin, but they're mentioned there because of where they are in terms of the family's authority of descent, because they are the children of the concubines. So those are the 12 children of Jacob, which become the 12 tribes of Israel. And any questions or comments there? That brings us then to the last several verses, verses 27 through 29. Verses 27 through 29. Go ahead, Obi.
Which is for Abraham and Isaac's children. And days of Isaac were 100 years. Isaac gave up the ghost of them, and was gathered unto being old in his old days, sons of his son Jacob.
So we have verse 27. Jacob is now going all the way south. If you look at the map, he's very near the bottom of that map, down where Isaac has been, the area of Mamre, city of Arba, which is mentioned again in the Bible. It's Kirjath Arba, which Caleb asks for as a special inheritance because of all the giants that were there at that time to clear it out. So all the way down there. And Hebron, also mentioned in connection with Caleb and with the judges. It's part of the land of Judah. So Isaac reunites with his whole family. Jacob reunites with his whole family, and Isaac's there. At this time, Rebekah has passed away. They never met again, the rest of his family. And as far as we know, Jacob spends the rest of his life largely in this area. We're very far away from what happened with Shechem, and we are in the southernmost area of the Promised Land. Then we have a side note. Verse 28 did not happen at this time. The days of Isaac were 104 years, so 180 years. Going back to how old was Isaac when Jacob was born? Isaac was 60. So at the time when Isaac passed away, Jacob and Esau were 120. How old are Jacob's children, or how old was Jacob when he had children? Somewhere close to the age of 40. So if Jacob is 120 when this happens, and he had children close to the age of 40, then his oldest children are 80, and Joseph is probably something like 60. In terms of when this happened, it happened right before Isaac travels to Egypt, because we know when Isaac blesses Pharaoh, he mentions he's 130 at that time. So Isaac would have passed away when Jacob was 120. Jacob, in blessing Pharaoh, mentions he's 130 at this time. So at the time when Isaac passes away, Joseph's already in Egypt, probably in prison. And everything else up here has progressed quite a bit. But verse 28 and 29 is just a summary of what happens when Isaac did pass away. Jacob and Esau buried him. And we know from other passages of Scripture, they buried him back up in the tomb that Abraham had got. So they went all the way back up to the middle of Israel and buried him there. Any questions and comments of those verses? So I will briefly overview this chapter. We are still early. We will go on to chapter 36, which is good because I did not want to spend a full week there anyway. So, a brief overview of chapter 35. Jacob is obeying God, and he returns all the way down, step by step, to Isaac and to his family there. At each step of the way, God appears to him and confirms his promises. Through tragedy, God brings blessing, as even evidenced by the birth of Benjamin. That's both a great tragedy with Rachel dying, but also leads to one of the tribes of Israel. And then we see the overview of the family. We now know why Reuben, Simeon, and Levi are disqualified, which is why God gives the kingship to Judah and the birthright to Joseph. Yes.
It's nice to see the Isaac can see the two children together again.
Absolutely.
So it was a blessing.
Absolutely.
Rebecca, she never started, but she was the household that is separated. But I think so. Isaac was praying, asking God for that, and he had a blessing before he died. He had the two children, and then buried.
Absolutely. For those listening online, Matilda mentioned how Isaac was able to see his two children, Jacob and Esau, reunited. That's a great blessing, both with how God worked in the family and with, I would say there are some areas where Esau demonstrated forgiveness, some areas where he didn't, but definitely he forgave Jacob. The relationship there was restored about as good as you could expect. Speaking of Esau, chapter 36 is about the generations, the genealogy of Esau. And there's only one more genealogy in the whole book of Genesis. So, a lot of these words because of names. I guess I'll go ahead and read this section by section. Now, these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan, Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Holibamah, the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and Basemath, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Nebaioth. And Adah bare to Esau Eliphaz, and Basemath bare Reuel, and Holibamah bare Jeush, and Jalam, and Korah. These are the sons of Esau which were born into him in the land of Canaan. And Esau took his wives, and his sons, and his daughters, and all the persons of his house, and his cattle, and all his beasts, and all his substance, which he got in the land of Canaan, and went into the country from the face of his brother Jacob. So, first part. Summary in verse 1. What is this chapter doing in the Bible? It's the generations of Esau. It explains everything that happened with him and with his descendants for quite a long time. Why does it call Esau Edom? The word Edom means red, and it's because Esau sold his birthright for red pottage of lentils, being a red lentil stew. The Bible mentions back at that time that Esau was named Edom, meaning red, because of his choice there to sell his birthright for red stew. So, he has 3 wives. He took the first 2 wives, and they were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah, because they were basically Canaanites, and presumably were immoral. And when he sees those 2 wives did not please his parents, he takes a wife of the daughters of Ishmael, distantly related to them, but not a Canaanite. That's Basemath. And he has Eliphaz, his oldest, through which a lot of chiefs are going to come from Adah, Reuel from Basemath in verse 4, and then several different children from Holibamah that are the different lines of his family. Then verse 6 is explaining why Esau kept on moving more and more southeast. Because Esau moves away from the promised land, he moves out into his semi-desert area and lives there. Verse 6 says why. He took his wives, sons, daughters, so like his whole family, all the persons of his house, that would be all of his servants, people working for him, and his cattle and all his beasts and all his substance, everything he owned, which he got in the land of Canaan. Because while Jacob is away, Esau is mostly in Canaan, but it's interesting. He invites Jacob to return with him down to Edom, which is not in Canaan. But Esau's been in Canaan and went to the country from the face of his brother Jacob. Verse 7, for their riches were more than that they might dwell together, and the land wherein they were strangers could not bear them because of their cattle. Each of them had so many possessions and such, they couldn't live close to each other. So Esau moves away. Any questions there in the first verses? So where did Esau move to? Verse 8. Thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. We are talking way southeast. If you look on the map, near the bottom is the Dead Sea. Mount Seir is east of the Dead Sea. You go from the Dead Sea to the right into the mountains there. That's where Esau lived. And then we have verses 9 and following. These are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. So this is in the next part of the chapter. The people of Edom, which are going to be a thorn in the side of Israel for a while, they are descended from Esau. These are the names of Esau's sons, which we already know from verses 3, 4, and 5. Eliphaz, the son of Adah, the wife of Esau. Reuel, the son of Basemath, the wife of Esau. And the sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, and Gatam, and Kenaz. So Eliphaz, who's his oldest, has 5 sons. And there's something special about verse 12. Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to Eliphaz Amalek. These were the sons of Adah, Esau's wife. Verse 12 explains where the Amalekites came from. You see them a couple times during the time of the kings. They are, when they show up, definitely enemies of Israel. They're descended from Eliphaz through his concubine, not one of his 5 main sons, but through his concubine. That's where the Amalekites come from. And these are the sons of Reuel, Nahath and Zerah. We're in verse 13 now. Shema and Mizah. These are the sons of Basemath, Esau's wife. So he has 5 grandsons through Eliphaz and Amalek, who is father of the Amalekites. And he has 4 grandsons through Reuel. And then what about his grandsons through Aholibama? That's verse 14. These are the sons of Aholibama, the daughter of Anna, the daughter of Zibeon, Esau's wife. And she bare to Esau Jeush and Jolam and Korah. 3 more grandchildren through Aholibama. So a total of 10 grandchildren. And why are those 10 important? Verse 15. These were the dukes of the sons of Esau. The word means like chief. They're in charge of a small area and all the people that are there. You have all of these grandsons of Esau. They become basically chiefs and rulers over their specific areas. These were the dukes of the sons of Esau in verse 15. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn son of Esau, Duke Teman, Duke Omar, Duke Zepho, Duke Kenaz. So 4 through his first son. Then Duke Korah, Duke Gatam, and Duke Amalek. 3 more. These are the dukes that come out of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These were the sons of Adah. And then we're talking about the sons of Basemath in birth order. These are the sons of Reuel, Esau's son. Duke Nahath, Duke Zerah, Duke Shema, Duke Mizah. These are the dukes that came of Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Basemath, Esau's wife. So, and then the last few. And these are the sons of Aholibama, Esau's wife. Duke Jeush, Duke Jolam, Duke Korah. These were the dukes that came of Aholibama, the daughter of Anah, Esau's wife. So, if you count them all up, he has 14. Jacob has 12 sons. Esau has 3 sons, but 14 grandsons. And each of these become chiefs, even though the promise is through the line of Jacob. God greatly blessed all of Abraham's descendants, and this blessing applies to Esau. A whole people come from him, 14 different grandsons, and each of them become chiefs. So, verse 19 is the summary at the end of all of that. We have a whole genealogy. Why is that there in the Bible? Because these are the sons of Esau, who is Edom, that's his nickname, and these are their dukes. Now we get to the other important people, and we have enough time to finish this chapter. I'll overview any particular things next week when I actually study this chapter specifically. And actually, I looked at how long the chapter is. We won't finish it. We'll get most of the way through it. So we'll overview it, finish the rest of this chapter, and keep going on next week. So verse 20. These are the sons of Sair the Horite who inhabited the land, Lotan and Shobal and Zibeon and Anah and Dishon and Ezer and Dishon. Dishon and Ezer and Dishon. These are the dukes of the Horites, the children of Sair in the land of Edom. Why is it called Mount Sair? Because this random guy, Sair the Horite, was living there, and he had 7 sons, and each of these 7 sons were chiefs. So when Esau moves over there, there's already a people there. There's this guy, Sair, and his 7 sons, and each of them are chiefs. So now we get to the important one. Notice verse 20. They're probably listed in birth order, but verse 20 mentions Lotan first. Verse 22, and the children of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. Timnah is mentioned because from her was descended Amalek, who is the Amalekites. In the verses we just read, it mentions that Timnah was the mother of Amalek. So that would be Esau's son married Timnah as a concubine, and the Amalekites descend from that. Children of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, so he has 2 other sons. Now we go to the second born back in verse 20, and the children of Shobal were these, Alvan and Mahanath and Ebal, Shephal and Onam. And then we go to the third born. These are the children of Zibeon, both Asia and Anah. This was that Anah that found the mules in the wilderness as he fed the asses of Zibeon his father. So apparently there was a big story here. He found, I'll say wild mules, which is not normal, but he found wild mules when he was looking for donkeys. And that's apparently a big enough story that it's mentioned in the Bible. That's why Anah is important in this genealogy. And with that, we are at time. Are there any comments or questions before we adjourn the study to next week? Okay, let's close in prayer. Dear Lord God, I thank you for today, and I thank you for the opportunity to study your word. We thank you for your clear faithfulness to Jacob in protecting him and being present with him and in answering him in distress. We thank you for even this part of the Bible, showing your faithfulness to return him back to his family, and you're working through even tragedy, but through everything for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.